everyone, and welcome to AI Meets API, the podcast where we decode the intersection of artificial intelligence and enterprise integration. I'm Amy, your producer, and today's episode is an exciting one. We're diving into the future of architecture, the evolution of iPaaS, and what composability really means in today's AI-powered world. And to do that, we're joined by a very special guest, Niket Mohey, Head of Solution Engineering at MuleSoft. With over 12 years of experience across SaaS, iPaaS, and enterprise platforms, Niket brings a unique lens to how businesses can thrive in this fast-changing landscape. Hosting today's episode is Ajay Konda. Ajay, over to you.
Thanks, Amy. Niket, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Let's start with your journey. You have been a builder, an architect, now a thought leader in the MuleSoft. How did your path lead to where you are today?
Thank you, Ajay, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm super excited to talk to you. As you said, my career kind of started with, I got a degree in telecommunications from IIT, and one of the things that I got taught over there, the importance of exchanging ideas. So I kind of went down a journey of always trying to make sure that things are talking to each other, whether it was systems or applications. So I've spent the last 25 years in the integration space, from the old days of what used to be SOA, ESB, infrastructure integration, and then the last 10 years I've been with MuleSoft leading the whole composability, and now into the new exciting world of AI. I always had this passion to make sure that I think the power of collective, whether it be apps, data, or even humans, is always better than silos. So I always had that passion in me, and I've seen the industry evolve to that, from huge monolithic apps that we used to write to microservices, and obviously the big part, in my view, that integration plays. So I always say that we're kind of like the glue. So we're the glue that brings it all together, and I really find it exciting, and I think it's going to be more exciting with the new agentic and AI world.
That's great. 10 years, that's a huge time. Niket, let's talk about the iPaaS, right? If you have seen, it is evolved from basic integration platforms to enabling real composability at this stage. How do you see this evolution shaping up?
I think the way I see it, that the iPaaS and the iPaaS market, if you look at it, was broadly fought between traditional, what I call app integration vendors, and traditional data integration vendors, right? And the goal there was to bring not only data from the apps together, but also data in large systems, your data marts, your databases, data lakes, what have you, right? And both these paradigms are going to be just as important in the agentic era, right? Where you have the need for applications and humans to access data to take actions, now all of that is going to be done by agents, right? And the iPaaS market kind of, to me, will have to evolve to that. So what I mean by that is, if you look at MuleSoft and the traditional iPaaS vendors, they all kind of give you governance, build capabilities for that app to app or data to data conversations. I think that'll have to evolve into the more agentic era. So, with the launch of MCP a few months ago, where, a way for agents to access systems. And then, as we all know, 3 weeks ago, Google announced A2A, and that's caught on by fire. So A2A is obviously a way or a protocol which makes agents talk to each other. That need is still there, where you had apps wanting to talk to other apps, right? If I go back to a traditional scenario, you wanted to get some data out of your data mart and into Salesforce. Before that happened, you needed a middleware layer or an iPaaS layer to do something with that data, transform that data, enrich that data, run fuzzy logic, clear that data, whether it's streaming, whether it's REST data. I think that need will still be required in the agentic world, right? The method would be different. It would be, I'm pretty sure, I didn't think MCP is going to roll back there on fire. It'll be on the middleware vendors and the iPaaS vendors to have support for that. Mule has already launched support for both MCP and A2A, and that's going to be how do we make those interactions. So that's one part of the market that I see changing. The second bit is that all the paradigm that we see in traditional, what I like to say, governance areas will have to be applicable to the new world of agents, right? What I mean by that is observability, right? Observability, of course, is going to change. Right now, you have observability, which is app level observability. If you look at observability of Mule app, you're looking at the traditional matrices like, what is the utilization, what are the transactions, and all of those things. So those things will still be relevant for the agent to agent or agent to system or application interaction. But I think we'll need to enhance some of those capabilities there. Like you'll need to figure out, okay, if you have an agentic or an agent-enabled application, or you have an agent on in its own right? What is the token consumption? What is the interaction model between two agents? So observing that. So really what I'm saying is those governance paradigms that you saw in the old iPaaS market will now need to be extended to this new agentic world. Another one is still, this is such a fast moving area, as MCP is a few months old, A2A is a few weeks old. And as we go through these interactions, some of the things are still not figured out, right? Like if you look at the old way of access, right? So you always had this old problem of access to systems. So you had ABACs, RBACs, all of these models. How do we implement them? Do we implement them in the system, or do we do it in another layer, right? And then came in the identity providers and SAML providers, OAuth providers that were there. So that problem is still not solved for agents, right? That's where I think the iPaaS vendors and middleware vendors will actually play a really critical role, at least in the medium term, right? So if an agent wants access to data, how's that agent going to do it? Is it going to be via a service layer, or is it going to be via something else? So the agent really doesn't know what kind of RBAC it needs to imply. So it'll have to call some of the service, right? So those little things, even if an agent is accessing an API, right? What are the OAuth implementations there? Are they going to be the same as you've had for apps, or are they going to be different? So those are all the problems that I think that the iPaaS will still need to solve in the medium term, and that's how I see the evolution of the iPaaS market going to support this shift to agents. See, fundamentally, what I think is going to happen is, of course, you're going to unleash this era of agents, right? There is no doubt that there are going to be billions of agents on the internet and, multi-million of agents within the enterprises, right? So the way these agents talk to each other will need to be managed. And I think that's where the iPaaS vendors can really, really lean in and help with. And then lastly, I feel that the LLM market LLM usage rather, in the enterprise is going to be federated, like pretty much like when we saw, and Mule was built on these principles that life forever is going to be hybrid. That is, when cloud came in, and are you going to bet on cloud? Are you going to go all in on cloud? Or are you going to go all in on data center? But 99% of the reality is that the life is hybrid, right? And the same thing I think is going to imply for the usage of these LLM stacks, right? I think enterprises and customers are going to want to choose, even different businesses are going to want to choose different LLMs for different purposes, right? Like I'll use an example. If I'm a customer facing segment of a business and I want a lot of market data, I can have OpenAI helping me over there. But again, for the devs in the same organization, probably cloud or Anthropic or Sonnet is more better suited for cloud gen, right? For code gen rather. So what I'm saying is that I'm seeing a world which is more federated in terms of LLM consumption. That's where the integration developers and the integration market can actually help the vendors, bringing all of best of breed LLMs together for what I would like to call that agent orchestration layer, right? So you want to have, and plus, mind you, I truly believe in the enterprise space. there will be domain-specific agents that could be built by enterprises on their LLMs of choice, right? A lot of people, if most of my large customers that I see, they're experimenting with all of this. They have the Anthropics there, but when they have a large data set, right, and they want to have a custom agent, let's say in finance, you have the lending domain, right? People are building SLMs and LLMs on top of that. It's easy to download Llama, start experimenting with Llama, start using frameworks like LangChain to enhance your app, to enhance experiences. And I think that's where really the real magic is going to be for the integration developers in the market. How do we help stitch all of that together, just in terms of a federated LLM? I want to extend by saying that I truly believe that this notion of domain agents is going to be very real. If you have worked with MuleSoft, you've heard things like composability for a long time, right? And what that was really just having the right level of digital building blocks for your enterprise to access. And I think the same digital building blocks, or rather the building blocks in their concept, maybe not in their implementations, are going to be really important for this whole new agentic era, right? And a big part of where I think is if you had those principles of composability in your enterprise, you're pretty well set for the agentic era, right? One of the conversations that we've been having internally is that Mule has helped for the past 15 years everyone with their digital transformation. But how do we now turn that into the agentic transformation? Customers are now not saying that digital transformation is done, but they're like, we're going to start this agentic transformation. So how do we help over there is going to be key for the entire iPaaS market, the way I see.
That's pretty exciting, Niket. Great to see your insights. Yeah, that really helps me and also listeners. Yeah, definitely. Whatever you said is this composability is a building block. It itself is a bigger transformation for many organizations. I'm sure whoever went through that journey are set for the adopting the this agentic transformation much quicker way. Coming to next one, right? So our podcast is AI meets API. So we like to know about AI's impact on the enterprise integration itself. Is there any ways AI is impacting on fast tracking or bringing more efficiency on the enterprise integration layer itself?
I think absolutely, and I think this goes back to our conversation about what are the iPaaS vendors going to do, right? And I think AI is going to come and impact. Let's just, if I look at the personas that you have in APIs and enterprise integration, there's the consumers, and then there are the developers, right? First, let's talk about the developers. I think their life is going to become so much easier. As I said, I've been doing this for 25 years. And when I used to be a developer, the most gut-wrenching thing, the most least avoiding thing as an integration developer, in my view, used to be trying to do these data transformations. And it is about 60% of the job, right? Like you can see the gray in my hair. And if I go back to the old days of where you were doing XSLT and writing reams of Excel to convert a BAPI coming from SAP into a XML payload or a JSON payload, it was a lot of work. And I think a lot of that will get automated and a lot of that will go away, right? And vendors like us are already leading the charge where you can actually have automated transformation. But I also think in terms of other areas that developers, so core developers who are doing complicated integration, their life's going to become so much easier with the introduction of these AI-ready tools, right? Tools like Windsurf, which is got bought by OpenAI, and of course, Cursor. So all of these tools just have started on this journey of vibe coding, and I really love it. I've played with Cursor, not so much with Windsurf, and you know, I like to say to the listeners, vibe coding is a thing, right? I think if you look at the chatter on the net, there are two parts. How impactful is vibe coding? And I'm not saying it's the 100% there, but it's going to get there. But also in terms of test and deploy and manage, right? So that's going to get the next level of boost in productivity in terms of how your CI and your CD is done, in terms of how your distributed log management is done, how you gain insights. Like, I don't think we're far away from the world where we have these agents monitoring insights and taking actions. So they're constantly monitoring some insights for you and telling you, okay, these are the next level and next set of actions that you want to take. So yeah, I think that's going to be a big part of it for the core developers. Then if you look at the other ancillary features that, API and integration and iPaaS vendors solve is the business user, right? Where you have technologies such as RPA, there are many RPA vendors, and just ingest of data, unstructured data. I think those are the two lines or two paradigms that are going to get really, really impacted, right? So RPA for sure, right? Automation of those tasks and everything like that is just going to be supercharged with these agents, right? Whether it be in time, in screen bots that are like your Chrome plugins and are back-ended by your agent, or an agent that's running with a LLM such as OpenAI, or even data ingestion capabilities, right? So one of the big things that has been a problem for as long as I've worked is OCR, right? If you looked at OCR, there have been vendors since before I was born that do this stuff. Right now, literally, if you look at the whole LM and AI technology, this is the crux where it becomes so real, right? The entire technology stack is written for character recognition and language translation, and that's how AI was born. Now,
Yeah.
OCR is going to become table stakes and commodity, right? So I think that's going to be a big change for people to think about how they look at these OCR tools, how did they look at these document processing rules, because uh, whilst it's super exciting to think about data in lakes and available via REST APIs and everything like that, there's so much unstructured data in large enterprises, right? So healthcare is a typical one where, there are so many PDFs that you need to ingest to make data. So I think that whole market is going to become super, super easier. And I just want to take us a little bit further back on the legacy stack where I think the impact is going to be very profound. If you work in the retail industry, there are very few retailers who don't have to live with EDI, right? So now all those EDI stacks that are out there, they're going to have to be agent infused as well, because they have a lot of critical data that is going to be used by these agents, right? So how do you get your agents to start consuming those AS400 documents and extend documents is I think going to get really, really revolutionized. And I actually see a way where, where you had lines of softwares managing different contracts, managing different partners, all of that getting rationalized and really supercharged with these AI capabilities. The same thing holds true in my head, for something like in the healthcare space, like HLS and HL7, right? HL7 payloads and interactions of those systems is very critical. It's business critical data that is maybe in these legacy formats, but now needs to be consumed by these agents. So the processing of the same, the consumption of the same is really going to take a boost with these agentic technologies.
One thing, right, to step back one little bit, right? So if somebody is starting an integration journey, right, there are three paths I see, right? One, you start as just a system integration, point to point, few integrations, and then you evolve to become like an enterprise integration platform where you make your iPaaS as a standard across the organization, where you do all your integrations and where you adopt the API led type of architecture. And then third type of thing which I realized while talking to Rupesh was platform engineering. That's where he is working with a lot of the high tech companies, where he is seeing that a lot of the companies are adopting using this iPaaS platform even for a platform engineering, where they are trying to see these technologies A2A or MCP and agents and all this seems to be more obvious when you go to the level of platform engineering type of organization you're adopting this iPaaS, or is it still whatever you have said is valid even in the first two phases of the organization also? Are you seeing that trend? Are you seeing in the far end of the more matured technically adaptable organizations?
I think I'm seeing it across, right? To be honest, like if I look at this platform engineering, right? if we peel the onion back, and I like to just start from the top and then start peeling it in, right? So if we just take it, what is the problem statement that we're going to have to deal with? So what is an enterprise or what is a customer trying to do? Like you're a SaaS vendor. I'll let's pick one of your choice, right? They have an application that was now serving humans. Now they have to refactor that application to serve the agentic era, but also enhance the productivity of the human, right? So what that means is they are going to have to explore ways of accessing these agentic capabilities and composing them, and actually that orchestration of the same. So let's say you're a procurement app where you had a traditional way of accessing data, cleansing data, and bringing in, all of that is going to get agentified. That's where I feel from a platform engineering perspective, a lot of people are going to be playing with the capabilities that MuleSoft and others bring into play because it's easily available to them. It's abstracted away. So the data access side of it is extracted away. And of course, the tooling that we give to connect into these different various new paradigms, right? Like if you were building a chatbot, let's say a year or two ago, you would just go ahead and figure out what your data access is. You'd come up with some rules. You put in some intelligence. You had smart agents by both Salesforce and ServiceNow and Moveworks and all of those guys. And they worked well for a while. Now, if you want to power the same thing, the same chatbot with an LLM to actually understand what it's doing, you have to invest in not only accessing that LLM, having the LLM understand the context of the domain that they're talking in. That's where, techniques like RAG and everything are easily implemented by middleware platforms such as Mule to say, hey, Mr. Agent, we don't want you to go and troll about account information on the web. I want you to look at account information from my a particular account domain, right? That's where the platform engineering people who are building these apps are using us to really supercharge a lot of that. And then in the enterprise space, I think as we discussed earlier, right, everyone's going to try to figure out what they do with this technology. I think the first run really would be in the enterprise and the business space would be for productivity, right? That's where you see the co-pilots, you see the enhanced experiences, like if you have a service agent, how the service agent can have an enhanced experience because of the agentic technologies at hand, whether it be in terms of knowledge retrieval or insights or consuming data or taking actions, right? So going back to my chatbot example earlier, right? You could have the chatbot really interact with you, give you the best things. Let's say we're talking to a hotel chatbot, it'll tell you, yeah, I have a space for you in Marriott, right? But now what can happen with that is that instead of just telling you, I have a space for you in a particular Marriott, it can just ask you the question, do you want me to book it, right? So that's an action that an agent will have to take based on certain parameters with access to the right sensitive data you have. To book a hotel, I'll need to know what your credit card is. I need some more information that's available to you. That might not have been privy to the chatbot earlier, right? So especially there are certain kinds of information that would never be available to these chatbots. But from an action framework, if you put the right guardrails, and if you talk about the whole agentic landscape, a lot of people talk about guardrails a lot. And that's where the iPaaS and the integration vendors can really help with those guardrails, whether it be in the RAG space or, going back to our example, how do I do RBAC? We can help you do RBAC over there. I think the short answer is I see it in both areas.
Okay, good. But this overall adoption, right? Two parts of the question. One firstly is like in COVID times, we have seen that a lot of the companies are forced to adopt or digitize because of the remote nature of the work. And quickly, we have seen so much adoption of the platforms, technology across the board. Is that type of movement is happening with the agentic right now, or is it something a lot slower than that, or is it a lot faster than that? Because a lot of hype is going on. Is that actually converting into the reality, or is still hype is more than the reality?
I think so. If I understood your question, is that people invested a lot in digitization because of COVID, and they've got to a place that journey is to for some customers still on. but some have achieved it. They've achieved that high level of digitization that COVID demanded to run their businesses. And now you're saying the next part of the journey is this AI agentic part of the journey and how real that is. Did I understand that question right?
Yeah, is it like it was pretty much like a force onto the companies that you adopt or you lose, right? So is that kind of a situation are we in? Are we more like adopt like cloud and other technologies slowly?
I think the closest akin that I can draw is that we're in a situation similar to what we saw when the iPhone came out, right? Everything had to go mobile, had to go on a device, right? So tomorrow, let's say, from an enterprise's perspective, you had to apply for a loan, you had to go to a web portal, and then you could do something. They had to quickly shift to say, how are we going to get it on the phone? In comes the mobile apps, in comes the whole idea of app stores, how you can publish there. I think we're in for something similar over here, wherein you've got this great set of technology. The iPhone's been released, but how does the business and how do the business capabilities come on top of it? So what I'm seeing is that the enterprises are in the middle of that cycle, understanding what this technology can actually mean for their business. And I think that's where we are. I certainly don't think it's a hype cycle. A lot of people are definitely experimenting with it, but I don't. I would caution that yes, I agree that a lot of the gains have not been realized, but I think that's just a short matter of time. I think in the next couple of months, people who've been experimenting with it will actually start getting really big benefits and gains, right? So the first phase that I feel that again, going back to my mobile example, if I was in the enterprise, I had a business process, let's say, uh, in workforce management, I had a truck rollout, right? So yeah, I can come up with a truck rollout app, but then I need to interrogate my business process and figure out what are the opportunities and what are the data that I need to expose into the app for that app to be successful. Similar thing will need to happen for businesses, and that's what a big part of what me and my team do at MuleSoft is. We walk into a customer and let's say, Mr. Customer, we know, or Mrs. Customer, we know you are excited about agentic, and we know that you have a lot of agentic ambitions. But let's take a step back and see where we can make an impact. So I think what we try and do is walk into a customer and say, let's look at a business process, right? Let's say you have a business process for code to cash. And in that code to cash, let's be very specific and very targeted about the agentic opportunities that we might have. And then we categorize them into, okay, you'll have agentic opportunities that are kind of your first front office opportunities, a service desk, a sales desk, and things like that. What are the opportunities in there? But as being in integration, there's a lot of automation and a lot of agentic opportunities that are there in the middle office and the back office. So we plan out that whole journey for the customers. And I think that's what most people will have to say, okay, the most bang for the buck that I think I will get is in the quote to cash process, and these are the 5 agentic opportunities I want to implement there. And I think that's where most customers are. That they're assessing that, and then that implementation will start, and you'll start to see really, really heavy benefits. I do believe that the first wave will be in that front office, because I think that's an easy one, right? Like the number of that's an easy one to calculate the ROI on, right? So the number of your call handling time is going down from a service desk perspective. The number of service agents, physical service agents you need is probably reduced. What can you automate, right? Like you'd see on Salesforce's uh, Salesforce is really big on drinking our own champagne, and if you look at help.salesforce.com, that's what they're trying to do over there. Is that have an agent handle a request before it hits to a human, and that's where you'll see real productivity gains. But I see that once that's been run, you'll see it in the back office as well, right? How does processing of invoices happen? Can that are there efficiencies to be gained over there? How does payment happen? Can an agent actually be able to authorize some payment, right? If you're a seller or a retail person, automating, say, not only that fulfillment process, but backend processes like RMA. I don't like the t-shirt that you've sent me. I'm going to send that back. Can all of that be then taken up by the agent? So that requires really bringing in the front office and the back office together. And that's where really the whole magic of composability and really thought about enterprise integration comes into in this new world.
Sounds good, Niket. Then my next question will be on what are the biggest architectural challenges enterprises are facing today while they are trying to adopt this new AI technology into their landscape?
Well, of course, the first one is access to the right data at the right time and in the right moment of the workflow, right? So, like, if you look at it, that's a big challenge. And what I mean by the right data is that an agent, if given bad data, is going to have bad actions come out of it, right? So that's the challenge that enterprises are trying to figure out. Yeah, I've got a lot of the data in my data lakes and everything is there, but is it the right data? Is the most up-to-date data, right? What is the validity and the lineage on that data? Going back to my previous example, if you want to have an RMA go through, how are you going to do an RMA if you don't have the right status of the order, right? Where is that order status coming from? Now, I think sometime in the very near future, all of those things will be exposed by agents, the said domain agents that I spoke to you earlier about. That'll be able to give real-time data to a master orchestrating agent that's then talking to these little agents, right? So I think that evolution is already underway, but that's the challenge that the enterprises have. What's the right data? How do I get the right data in front of them? The second one is just understanding to what I was just saying a second ago, understanding what is that biggest bang for buck we can get, right? As you've seen with digital transformation, right? You can't go on a journey where you have a 5-year plan and say we'll give you a magic bullet at the 5-year end of 5 years. You have to really start delivering small little incremental value. And that's where breaking down your business processes and looking at these agents, where these agents can help, is really the challenge that the customers are dealing with. It's picking that up. And then secondly, figuring out the right enterprise architecture for your agents to perform, right? RAG is a great technique that we always keep talking about, right? But how do you implement your RAG? Whether you're going to get data in a big old data lake, cleanse it, and then expose it, or are you going to have a real-time solution? Then really making sense of data insights, right? Like, I think enterprises have gotten really good and big on how we access data stored, whether structured or unstructured, but live streaming data, deriving insights out of those live streaming data, right? Those are some of the key things that you see that the enterprises are still struggling with it. And then once the data is there for techniques like RAG and everything to work, it needs to be tagged properly. That means that it needs to have the right level of metadata associated with it. That's another challenge that we have a lot of data, but the metadata is not in line with what we want to achieve. So, yeah, I think those are some of the challenges. In terms of the whole LLM side of things, I think that problem is kind of solved, like with with techniques that they do both in training, pre-training, test time compute, and all of those techniques are really helping the LLMs get more in terms of the domain that they're running on. But for specific agents, we still need to do a lot of that data access, data cleanse. That still is a problem.
Sounds good. So now we spoke about from a product point of view and also from enterprises point of view. The other part of the equation for overall is the partners like us, right? System integrators or solution architects, the customer who are providing. How do we need to adapt to this change, or any thoughts on how we can become, the things are moving so fast, how we can become a strategic for MuleSoft?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that the technology vendors such as us have come up with the solution, right? But the problem statement still needs to be defined at the customer's place. And that's where you guys who understand customers' business, their business processes, their implementations so much better than us, and you have that white glove individualistic treatment of the customers. That's where you can really help in trying to uncover a lot of this, right? Whether it is understanding a customer, to my point earlier, right? You go and look at a customer's code to cash process, you understand the system landscape, and you can come up and say, hey, in your code to cash process, I think the biggest bang for buck for an agentic opportunity is not in the front office, but in the mid office, right? Because of these reasons. And I think those are the things that I feel are required by the customers and will be appreciated by the customers coming from partners such as you. And then obviously understanding the changing tech stack that we have, right? So like the release cadence is going to be so much faster now, right? When we talk about MCP support, what does it mean? So understanding, where to use MCP, when to use REST, right? Those kind of things really would help us. And I think the muscle that you will need to build is the changing developer velocity, right? I think how do you make sure that your developer productivity and your developer velocity goes up, right? And by the way, I used to before I joined MuleSoft, I was a partner for IBM for a long, long time and kind of the similar shoes as you wear. So I totally understand where you guys are coming from. And one of the things that I used to do is boilerplate everything that is not business logic, right? Business logic is supposed to be really specific to a customer or their use case, but things like logging, CI, CD, and I think that's really a big value that our partners bring is that how they can bring those frameworks. I think understanding the changing technology stack and extending that practice where you're able to create these big boilerplates, take to our customers, like our solutions will go say 80% of the way, but if you guys can come on top of it and provide that last mile to the customer, I think that's going to be really, really key. And then obviously, as I said, getting your developers in Akin with the new technologies, the new ways of cursors, the new way of doing CIs and things like that will really help.
Thanks so much, Niket. That's good insights. Let's lighten up a little bit and let's do a rapid fire questions. I have a couple of questions I'd like to
Absolutely.
go through and like to know that what comes out of you.
Okay.
So, what's your favorite API use case right now?
What's my favorite API use case right now? Oh, I have to think about that. I think the favorite API use case that I have is where the APIs are being used to manage the RAG, right? Where they are actually an integral part of the RAG architecture of an agent implementation, right? An API that's exposing real-time order status with the context and the metadata to the agent is pretty exciting. And then the next part is how we take those APIs and create them into actions for an agent. You want to do an update to a registry and things like that. That's super exciting to me. But I want to say that what's more exciting is that some of the API principles being applied to the agentic world, right? So things like an agent registry, like the APIs and services have always had that industry, but there's this whole wave, and you'll see a lot of announcements come from our product as well. How do you have this collection of agents, specialized agents, and a marketplace where you can go and say, hey, I've got an agent that does XYZ, and I can just use that across the enterprise. It's quite exciting.
Book every architect should read.
What book every architect should read? In my way, I'll paraphrase this is that you have to be a believer in a federated software development model to read this, and that's where I think domain-driven design. I'm a huge fan of domain-driven design, and books by Juan are great. So if you look at DDD books by Juan, they're really really important. I think DDD principles and basic integration SOA principles are just good software architecture principles. But when I was in college, they used to talk about the view of a software, and it would be the MVC view of a software as to how you develop software. And I think that is still very applicable, but in a federated way. And that's where I like to apply that principle and actually use it in a particular domain. One of the reasons I say that is that if you read domain-driven design, it really helps that bridge between business language and software language. And that's the key to creating great products and great software in my mind.
What is the most underrated skill in the tech today?
What's the most underrated skill in tech today? I would say that, you know, it's the insights and the observability part of it, right? The whole market has been, okay, you have from an infrastructure, you'll have SREs and everything like that, and then you have app insights. I think that's a market that really needs some TLC because in my view, we shouldn't be too far away now where we should be able to say that design time changes have an impact at runtime. So what I mean is that when you're coding for something, you do something wrong, that's going to have a runtime impact. So let's say I would love to be in a world where a memory leak that happens in production is easily tied to a one bit of bad design code that the developer wrote. And I don't think we're very far away from there with these agentic technologies. I think that's something that's going to be really game changing, right? Real time feedback from runtime and design time. So that at design time, as you're designing your apps, you're able to tell a developer, say, hey, in the context of, say, Twitch or a TV app, if you use these functions, you're going to have these problems, right? At design times, informed by their own data, right? Because you can inform them on generic and you can go to Substack and you can get a lot of data there. And of course, things like Cursor help you there. But in terms of the context of the enterprise, I think it's a missing skill that we haven't had. And quite typically, organizationally, also what happens is that the development teams are different from the operation teams. So how do we bring those really close to? Of course, DevOps bridges that to a large degree, but I still think that there's more that can be done.
Still need orchestration. Who is your dream keynote speaker you love to see at a tech event?
I would like to say that it would be, the CEO of DeepMind, what's in the Habas. I think he's he really inspires me. It really inspires me just the way that they created DeepMind, and DeepMind is actually the one that fueled this whole age. And of course, OpenAI ran away with it. But the fact that a computer scientist gets a Nobel Prize in chemistry is super exciting for me. And I think he really inspires me in that manner with all the work that they've done in AlphaFold and things like that. So yeah, it'll be Dennis Haber.
What's your favorite sports team?
What's my favorite sports team? I lived for a long, long time. Most of my life I spent in New Zealand, so I'm a big fan of the New Zealand rugby team, the All Blacks. So I watch rugby. I'm trying to get into American football. I've been here almost 10 years. Rugby still remains a passion of mine, so I'd have to say it is the New Zealand All Blacks.
Great to know that. So, yeah, great conversation, Niket. Before we wrap up, if you could give one piece of advice to young integration professionals stepping into the world of integration and architecture, what would it be? Or any closing thoughts you have?
I think for an integration professional, I would say the world is changing, but the world is still yours, right? Like I just say that the problem statement of data movement and data access and interaction, as I started, the problem statement of things communicating with them, with each other still remains, right? Until the time that problem is there, it's a great, exciting way to be, right? Of course, you're going to have to learn. I think life is going to become much easier with the new IDs, new tools that are coming out for you. So, I also believe that I used to be a firm believer that integration professionals should not be thinking about business logic. That should be something that is with the apps. But I'm kind of excited that with this new world, maybe the integration professionals are the ones that are implementing business logic that's more than just orchestration and workflows. So I think it's an exciting time for them. I do believe that the need for integration will still remain and explode, maybe not in the same way it is right now, but yeah, those are some of my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Niket. Thanks for giving us time. Over to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Niket, thank you. And thank you, Ajay, for that thoughtful conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow AI Meets API on your favorite platform. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected.